What's up, guys? Neil Orfield here, and I'm going to show you how I will be setting up my fantasy cruncher for the Super Bowl. I'll be setting up here for the largest field GPP on FanDuel. While you're coming in, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. All right, I'm going to start by rearranging my columns a little bit. I've got a quick view saved, so I can see now my columns rearranged in the middle of my screen. I want to see ownership projection, my exposure cap, and then how much I get of players once I have run a crunch. Next thing I'm going to do is sort by projection and remove every player who does not have a projection from my player pool. So just quickly scrolling down, unchecking all these boxes. This is going to save me some time when I'm making groups. These players will no longer show up and I won't have to wade through them to find players who I want to add to groups. Just removing all of them now. There we go. All right. Next, I'm going to go click this MVP tab, and I'm going to set an exposure cap on all MVPs of 20%. This just spreads out the ownership of my MVPs. I think that there are at least 5 players who will look like good MVPs here with Hurts, Mahomes, Kelsey, Brown, Smith. You could also, some of these others. Goddard seems like a fine MVP. I'm sure some of these other guys are going to be interesting lower owned MVP options as well. So I like to spread out my MVP exposure. That's why I'm using the cap of 20%. If you want to spread it out even more, you could set that at 10%. If you want to be more condensed to, the quarterbacks, the top few guys, maybe set it at 30, 40%. But I'm choosing 20%. I think that seems like a good number. It's what I typically use. There's usually at least 5 players who I'd like to get into that MVP spot. Next, I'm going to go into advanced options. I'll be working in 2 tabs here, the general tab and the groups tab. Starting here in the general tab, unique players per lineup, the default is set to 1. I'm going to leave it at 1. I'm setting up here again for a 150 set. If you are making 40 or fewer lineups, I would recommend changing that to 2 unique players per lineup just for the sake of diversifying your lineup set. Salary, I'm not going to set a minimum salary. I am going to set a maximum salary. So the default is 60,000. That's the amount that you can use of your salary cap on FanDuel. I like to leave some salary on the table just to avoid the most duplicated lineups. If I'm lucky enough to win, I want to win a significant amount of money. I don't want to be duplicated 1,000 times. So I like to leave some salary on the table. And I would typically recommend leaving at least 1,000 on the table. For the sake of this video, I'm going to leave 1,500. You could leave more, you could leave less. It's increments of $500 on FanDuel salaries. So I think leaving $1,500 on the table is a good place to start. Offensive players versus defense, the default is set to max of 2 players. I'm going to change that to 4 so I could theoretically have 4 players from one team against just the defense of the opposing team. Not something that's going to happen in a lot of my lineups, particularly in this matchup where the defenses aren't going to grade out as well as some other matchups, but something I want to at least allow for if it does project well enough. Exposure cap, I'm leaving at 100%. I already changed it in the MVP spot specifically to 20%. And then randomness, I'm going to set to 30%. If you want more control over your lineups, use a lower number here. I know some people who use 0 randomness and because they want complete control over their lineups. I'm going to use 30%. I don't mind giving up some of that control. And then minimum projection included in the calculation. The default is set to 3. I'm going to leave it at 3. If there's a player who I want in my player pool who projects for fewer than 3 fantasy points, I will just manually boost their projection to get them above that number. And then players from each team max, the default is set to 4. Again, I'm going to leave that at 4 so I can have 4 from one team against just 1 from the opposing team. All right, next I'm going to move to the groups tab. And here is how I handle correlation in my lineups. You know what I did immediately the first time I won 6 figures in a DFS contest? I converted my trial membership to Stokastic, which was awesome at the time, to a full annual subscription. That's because I knew these were the best tools in the industry. That was 2019, and they've gotten even better since then. Well, good news, you can get access to these same tools without winning 6 figures first with a great offer from BetMGM. You can get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you sign up, deposit, and bet at least $10. That's every tool on the site for every sport other than Fantasy Cruncher, a $120 value. All you need to do is click the link in the description of this video, follow the steps, and deposit $10 or more and place a bet of $10 or more on whatever you want. And when that bet settles, MGM will hit you up with how to get your subscription to Stokastic. You don't even need to win the bet. On top of all of that, you also get bet insurance on your first bet up to $1,000. That means if you win the bet, you get your money. If you lose the bet, though, you still get your money back in site credits. It's a great deal from BetMGM and a long trial subscription to the best DFS tools out there. The legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus, and if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Reminder, make sure to use the link or use promo code PLATINUMSUB or we won't be able to track you. So typically for me, the most important correlations are related to the quarterback because of the way things are scored on both FanDuel and DraftKings, even more so on DraftKings, but even on FanDuel, receivers do outscore the quarterback on every passing play. They get a half point per reception. The quarterback obviously doesn't get that half point. They also get more points per yard and more points per touchdown. So on every passing play, the receiving player scores more points than the passing player. So that really affects how you want to handle correlations here. So I'm going to start with a Hurts MVP group. So we find Jalen Hurts in the MVP spot, going to make him my key player. Then I'm going to sort by position and add every Eagles pass catcher to a secondary group. So Zach Pascal, AJ Brown, Quez, Devontae, Dallas, Stoll, Calcaterra. I'm not going to add the running backs just because they are not especially Jalen Hurts just doesn't throw to the running backs all that often. So I don't really think I need to include them in this group. I'm also, so for the Jalen Hurts group, so I explained how on every passing play, the quarterback is outscored by the receiver. Doesn't affect Jalen Hurts as much as it affects like Patrick Mahomes or, basically almost every other quarterback because he runs so much. So many of his fantasy points come on the ground. He rushed for over 50 yards per game this season. He had 13 rushing touchdowns in 15 games. He just does so much damage on the ground that we know that he has the upside to rack up fantasy points without bringing along a receiver with him just because he does so much of his damage on the ground. So Jalen Hurts is the rare quarterback who I'm not actually going to require a pass catcher in the flex, even when he's in the MVP spot. So if he's in the MVP spot, we're expecting him to score a lot of fantasy points. Generally, quarterbacks are going to get those through the air, and on those passing plays through the air, they're getting outscored by their wide receivers. So it's really important to have a wide receiver in there. And then oftentimes if it's a totally non-rushing quarterback, I want two wide receivers in the, or pass catchers, I should say, in the flex. With Jalen Hurts, doesn't really apply just because he could easily, I mean, not easily, but it's certainly within the realm of possibilities that he gets, 17 fantasy points. He could, rush in for 2 touchdowns and add another 50 yards. Like it's very possible for Jalen Hurts to get most of his fantasy production on the ground. So that makes it less necessary to include a pass catcher in every lineup where you have Hurts at MVP. So I'm going to click this only apply plus minus adjustments button so I'm no longer requiring any of these pass catchers. However, generally, I mean, if Jalen Hurts is putting up enough fantasy points to be in the MVP spot, he's still probably having a pretty good game through the air as well. Maybe throwing for a touchdown or throwing for a lot of yardage. So I still do typically prefer to have at least one pass catcher in my Jalen Hurts MVP lineups. So I'm going to give boosts of 12% to each of these pass catchers in lineups where Hurts is in the MVP spot. We'll see if I need to give boosts a little bit more after I've run some lineups. I'll kind of see if this is enough to get a pass catcher in the majority. Because typically, if I have 30 Jalen Hurts MVP lineups, which I think is pretty likely, I set the cap at 20%, 150 lineups. I'm probably going to get to that max of 20%. So I'll have 30 Jalen Hurts MVP lineups. If all of them are Jalen Hurts in the MVP spot and no Philadelphia pass catchers in the flex, I'm not going to like that. I'm going to want the majority of them to have at least one pass catcher in the flex. So we'll have to see how the lineups come out after I've run a crunch. All right, next I'm going to set a Mahomes MVP lineup. Okay, I'm going to find Patrick Mahomes in the MVP spot, make him my key player. And now I'm going to add all of these Kansas City pass catchers to a secondary group. And I think we can include the running backs here as well. All right, so for this group, Patrick Mahomes, he rushed for, I believe, 4 touchdowns this year. Not nearly as prolific a runner as Jalen Hurts. He also has that bum ankle. So I think I'm going to require at least one pass catcher in lineups for Patrick Mahomes in the MVP spot. I'm also going to give those boosts to make it more likely that I get to multiple. I think I'm going to give a smaller boost to Travis Kelce, just because I don't want it to be project so well. I'm concerned that I'm going to get Travis Kelce in all of them, but he is kind of expensive. So yeah, maybe I'll start with a 6% boost. We'll see how it goes. And as usual, running backs not as involved in the passing game. I'm going to give smaller boosts here. Okay, so that'll do it for my Patrick Mahomes MVP lineup, requiring at least one pass catcher from this group. That's what this rule says here. And then I'm also giving boosts to make it more likely that I get to multiple in those Mahomes MVP lineups. Then I'm only making one more group, which is a Mahomes flex group. So I'm going to find Patrick Mahomes in the flex, make him my key player. And then I'm going to add all of these Chiefs pass catchers to the secondary group. And I'm including the running backs here. And then now, because I have Mahomes in the flex, I can also include all of the pass catchers in the MVP spot here. It's got a lot of them. All right. I think we're getting there. Looks good. Okay. Now, and this is a group you don't necessarily need to set. So all I'm doing here, I'm leaving the group just like this. I'm requiring, if I've got Patrick Mahomes in the flex, I'm saying I want to have at least one pass catcher from the Chiefs somewhere in my lineup, either in a flex spot or in the MVP spot. On FanDuel, you can get away with it sometimes not having a pass catcher to pair with your quarterback just because it's only half point per reception. It's a little bit more likely for a quarterback to get there just through sheer volume. But it's still pretty thin. So I still, in a 150 set, I'm going to require one of these pass catchers in all of my Mahomes lineups. You could consider not requiring it, maybe clicking this button, given just tiny little bit like 4% boost each pass catcher. But how I'm going to handle it, I am going to just require a pass catcher in every Mahomes lineup here, even if he's in the flex. And I'm not even going to make a group for Hurst just because, again, he is such a great runner. He does so much on the ground. And although I did require, or I gave boost to his pass catchers when I've got Hurst in the MVP spot, he could realistically be optimal in the flex with just like 15, 17 fantasy points, like one rushing touchdown and 50 yards and not pass much at all. He could still be optimal in the flex in a scenario, especially where if the Eagles don't put up a ton of points. So it's a lot more likely for Jalen Hurts to be optimal in the flex with no pass catchers than it is in the MVP spot. So not doing anything to require pass catchers or boost pass catchers when I've got Hurts in the flex. I'm going to save that. And again, that could also change depending on how these lineups come out. Sometimes if I'm getting naked Hurts in every single lineup, then I might come back and change that a little bit. But that's how I'm going to start it. So I'm going to use my projections, crunch out 150 lineups. All right, so as you can see here, I've got Hurts in 75% of my lineups in the flex, plus 20%. So I've got Hurts in 95% of my lineups. That's interesting. Not a huge surprise. He projects very well. But I'm going to look through these lineup cards just to start. And I can see I've got Hurts in the MVP spot with Goddard, Mahomes with Gray. That lineup looks great. We've got both for quarterbacks correlated with pass catchers. Second lineup, Mahomes in the MVP spot with Juju and Tony. That's my preference, to have multiple pass catchers with Mahomes. I do have Hurts here in the flex naked. Again, I'm okay with that in some lineups. I don't want it to be like the majority of my lineups, but if I get some of those, that's fine. He can do a lot of damage on the ground. This time we've got Kelce in the MVP spot. No Mahomes. That's totally fine. Again, the receiver outscores the quarterback on every passing play. Kelce is also significantly cheaper than Mahomes. So all you really need here is, Kelce puts up a lot of fantasy points, maybe scores a couple touchdowns, and then Hurts outscores Mahomes. You're not going to be able to fit in Mahomes in this lineup anyway. So it's totally fine to have Kelce in the MVP with no Mahomes. We've also got Hurts with Devontae Smith. Looks good. Here we've got Devontae Smith in the MVP spot with Kelce. or sorry, with Hurts, and then we've got Kelsey and MVS there as well. Everything looks good. Mahomes with Noah Gray, Hurts with Goddard, Hurts, AJ Brown. Yeah, so far all of these are looking good. Here we've got Hurts in the MVP spot with multiple receivers, looks good. Mahomes with just Tony. Again, I prefer to have two Chiefs pass catchers when I've got Mahomes at MVP, but I intentionally allow for this. If I have this, I want the majority of my Mahomes MVP lineups probably to have multiple Chiefs receivers in the flex. But on FanDuel, you only have 5 players in your lineup. It's certainly plausible for Mahomes to be optimal at MVP with just one pass catcher. I mean, you can envision a scenario where Mahomes throws a touchdown to Travis Kelsey. Travis Kelsey doesn't do a whole lot else, so Mahomes gets a good amount of points from that. Spreads the ball around in general. Maybe Kadarius Toney scores a touchdown as well. I think it's plausible to have Mahomes at MVP with just one pass catcher. Here we've got Hurts with AJ Brown, Hurts with Goddard. Yeah, in general, I think that these lineups are looking good enough for me. Here's another naked Hurts lineup. Again, that's fine if I get to some of those. You know what I did immediately the first time I won 6 figures in a DFS contest? I converted my trial membership to Stokastic, which was awesome at the time, to a full annual subscription. That's because I knew these were the best tools in the industry. That was 2019, and they've gotten even better since then. Well, good news. You can get access to these same tools without winning 6 figures first with a great offer from BetMGM. You can get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you sign up, deposit, and bet at least $10. That's every tool on the site for every sport other than Fantasy Cruncher, a $120 value. All you need to do is click the link in the description of this video, follow the steps, and deposit $10 or more and place a bet of $10 or more on whatever you want. And when that bet settles, MGM will hit you up with how to get your subscription to Stokastic. You don't even need to win the bet. On top of all of that, you also get bet insurance on your first bet up to $1,000. That means if you win the bet, you get your money. If you lose the bet, though, you still get your money back in site credits. It's a great deal from BetMGM and a long trial subscription to the best DFS tools out there. The legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus, and if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Reminder, make sure to use the link or use promo code PLATINUMSUB or we won't be able to track you. I think I'm happy with the way the lineups are looking. So the other thing that I'm going to check is the player exposures. So I just go through tab by tab, each position, just an easy way for me to track how much I'm getting of everybody. So starting at the quarterback spot, I'm getting to 75% Jalen Hurts. I'm only getting to 12% Patrick Mahomes. Okay, so Mahomes is more expensive than Jalen Hurts, and he projects 4 points worth. So that kind of makes sense. He is, I believe, the most expensive player on the slate. If he projects for just 20.5, I'm not going to get a lot of Mahomes. So I think right away, I know I'm going to want more than 12% Mahomes. So I'm going to give him just a decent projection boost right away, 1.5 projection boost. Into running back. He was the same way on DraftKings, just not getting a ton of these running backs. I think it would be a mistake to not get to any Miles Sanders. Project for just 7.5% ownership. Yeah, he's expensive for his projection. Miles Sanders is also, live to have a really big game, a couple touchdowns. So I want to be above this 7.5% on Miles Sanders. So I'm going to give him a pretty significant boost right away. Isaiah Pacheco, if I get close to the field on Pacheco and McKinnon, I think I'd be okay with that. So I'm just going to give these guys little boosts. Kenneth Gainwell, I mean, I'm going to love Gainwell if he is 2.7% owned. I don't know that I believe that. I think that with the big games he's had in the playoffs, I kind of suspect that Gainwell gets some steam just from game log watchers. So I don't think that this number is going to hold. If it did hold, though, I would be I would love Kenneth Gainwell at 3% ownership. So I'm going to make the assumption that he's still going to be relatively low owned. So I'm going to give him a significant boost. Boston Scott, at under 1%. Boston Scott, always live to vulture a touchdown. Definitely somebody that I would want a lot of at under 1% ownership. So I'm going to give him a significant boost. And then CEH, it's a little bit thinner. I prefer Scott and Gainwell, I think. But CEH, certainly live to score a touchdown. I'm going to at least get him into the player pool. First, I'm going to change this to 5.6, not 56. And then I'm going to, get CEH into the player pool. All right. Wide receiver. Yeah, so not getting to a ton of AJ Brown, getting to a decent amount of Devontae Smith, a little bit of Juju, MVS. Let me see what I'm getting of Kelsey. All right, so not actually getting. I was thinking I might get like 60% Kelsey. Okay, so just looking at these numbers, I think I'm going to want a little bit more. AJ Brown probably. I'll boost him just a little bit. Devontae Smith, I'm just going to give a tiny little boost just to keep him, hopefully try and keep him right around where he is. Again, giving the boost just to keep up because I'm giving boosts elsewhere to other players, and all projections are relative to each other. So essentially, when you give somebody else a boost, you're essentially decreasing the boost for everybody else. So just keep giving him a tiny boost to keep up with the other players. I think I do really like Juju. Going to give him a little boost just to try and keep up about where he is. MVS, yeah, I'm gonna yeah, bring him up to 6.4, just a tiny, tiny boost there. Kadarius Toney, I think we'll see if I still get a lot of Kadarius Toney with the changes I've made to the running backs. I'm just going to leave him where he is for now. Same with Quez Watkins. I'm just going to I'm going to make some other adjustments first, get these other guys in my player pool, and then I'm going to try to adjust again. Okay, 31% Kelsey looks good. 34% Goddard looks pretty good. 13% Noah Gray looks good. Don't know that I'm going to go into Stoll or Calcaterra. I think I'd be more inclined to go to Jody Fortson just because of the Chiefs' tendency to get weird, get players into the mix who, are not really great fantasy producers generally. So I'm going to get it a little bit of Jody Fortson there. Kickers, yeah, I'm getting a lot of Butker and Elliott. Not going to change their projections. I imagine these numbers are going to come down because of the changes I made elsewhere, but we'll see. And then defenses, yeah, I'm getting to just 8% Eagles, 5% Chiefs. I think I'd like to be a little bit higher. I mean, the field's not getting to a ton. So I think I actually am going to give a little boost to these guys. All right, and then I'm going to crunch again. Yeah, if I end up around here on the defenses, I think I'd be fine with it. I'd probably try to get above the field here, but it's not taking a huge stance there. Kickers, yeah. So these numbers came down a little bit, still getting a good amount. Tight ends, now I'm down to 19% Kelsey, 30% Goddard, 6% Gray, and then 13. Yeah, I don't want 13% Jody Fortson, but I'm going to give Gray a bigger boost. I like me some Gray at 7% ownership. Goddard looks good, 30%. I'm going to bring up Kelsey just a bit. Wide receivers, okay, so 17% AJ Brown. I probably want a little bit more. Smith, I'll bring up a little bit. Juju, I'm going to like, so I'm going to bring him all the way up to 9. MVS, slightly. Darius Toney, I'm still getting a good amount. I wouldn't mind if this came down just a little bit. He's an interesting player, not on the field all that much, but very used when he is on the field. Quez Watkins, I'm going to at 9%. He's kind of interesting. Big play receiver. Sky Moore, similar, lower owned. Probably want to be above the field at 3.5% on Sky Moore at 6,000. Justin Watson, I like quite a bit, just as a player who's not a sexy name, but out on the field a good amount, gets targeted. He was targeted at least once every single game he played this season. That's very interesting to me. And then Zach Pascal, a little bit thinner, but at 3% ownership, he did in both of the playoff games so far. He was running routes on more than 30% of passing plays. So I'm going to want to have some Zach Pascal in my lineups as well. And running backs, okay, still not getting much Miles Sanders. I'm going to give him another pretty hefty bump. Give Pacheco a little bit of a bump. McKinnon. Gainwell again at that. I'm going to love him if it's under 3% owned. So I'm just going to give him a significant bump now. Austin Scott also, and I think it's more real that he's going to stay probably not under 1%, but definitely under 5%, which I'm going to really like at 7,500. Player live to vulture a touchdown. And CEH 4% would be more than enough. So I'm going to leave him there. All right. And this seems a little bit more reasonable. 29% Mahomes, 74% Jalen Hurts seems more reasonable. I don't know that I want 95% Hurts. So maybe here's where I go. I usually start by giving boost to some players, and then essentially reducing his projection via boost to other players because it's all relative. Here, though, I think I'm just going to go ahead and just reduce his projection just a little bit. Yeah, so I'm still at 86% Hertz, I would imagine. Yep. So I'm happy with 86% Hertz. I think that's totally fine. I've got 45% Mahomes now. That looks good. So Sanders coming up, and I think this, I'll do one more crunch here. I'll just go through one more. Sometimes I crunch 20, 30 times. So this is, to be clear, this is what I end on here is not going to be my end lineup set. I'm just trying to give you an idea of my process and kind of show you my thought process as I go. But this is not going to be my final. I'm just going to do one more crunch here, and then I'll finish this video. So 12%, Miles Sanders, definitely more reasonable. I think if he's going to be 7.5% owned, I think I'll want even more than 12%. So I'm just going to give him a little bit more of a boost. 8% Pacheco seems about right. I want maybe a little bit more. Let's bring him up to 11. Give McKinnon just a little bit of a boost to keep up. 23% Gainwell. I mean, at 20, if he's at under 3% owned, I would actually be totally fine with 23% Gainwell. I do think this number is going to come up on. I'll probably want to be close to, if the field's at like 15%, that's probably where I'll want to settle in. I think I'd rather have, I think Boston Scott again. I think it's more likely to hold. And then CEH, just a total wild card. No confidence that he even sees the field. But if he's going to be completely unowned, he's at least interesting to somebody who is live to score a touchdown. Brown 26%, Smith 25%, Juju 27%. These all look fine to me. Probably want just a little bit more MVS than 3%. 15% Tony. Yeah, he's coming back closer to the field. That's about where I think I want to be. Quez Watkins 8%. Maybe I'll get a little bit above the field there. So I'll try to give him a little boost, hopefully jump over the field. Sky Moore at 6.7%. That seems about right. 15% Justin Watson looks good. 7% Zach Pascal getting above the field. I think I like all those numbers. Kelsey's still not getting a ton. Going to give him another little boost. 23% Goddard. Yeah. I like Goddard quite a bit. He looks great on DraftKings, on FanDuel. He's interesting. I'm going to bring him up just a tiny bit. Noah Gray at 8%. I think I'm going to want to be above the field here. Give him a little bit of a bigger boost. And then Jody Fortson, just going to leave him where he is. Still see if I still get some. Yep. So now my kickers have come down quite a bit with all the boosts that I've given elsewhere, but this is, close to, I think, where I want to be on the kickers. So that looks fine. And then the defenses, yeah, I've come down. Man, it's a tough one. These quarterbacks are not very turnover prone, but still going to want some. I mean, that's still obviously, Jalen Hurts threw 6 interceptions this year. Patrick Mahomes threw 12. So certainly pretty likely that at least one interception is thrown in the game. And of course, an interception can always quickly turn into a pick 6. And then you might need the defense. So going to make sure I get some of these defenses in my player pool, even if I'm not all that confident in them. And I'll crunch out one more time. So this is going to be my final crunch. And so this is not going to be, perfect. This isn't where I'm going to end up, but you can see here. I mean, these defenses 7% each. That's getting closer to where I think I want to be. Probably, honestly, the field, that's probably close to where I want to be on the defenses. The kickers, yeah, 20% or so of each looks good. Tight ends, okay, 21% Kelsey. Yeah, it's fine. Still feels a little bit light, but I think that's okay. I'd prioritize the quarterbacks more on FanDuel in particular, where you don't get a full point per reception. Now I'm getting 39% Dallas Goedert. That was quite the jump. I do like Dallas Goedert quite a bit, so I'd probably be okay with that. 12% Noah Gray looks good. 8% Jody Fortson, still probably a little bit high. And then wide receivers, yeah, 25% AJ Brown feels about right. 23% Devontae Smith, 22% Juju, 7% MVS. These numbers honestly all look, I'm getting there. I think I'm getting close to where I want to be. Probably want to be, as I said, above the field on Sky Moore. So maybe I give him just a little bit of a bump. Justin Watson, I do like quite a bit. Maybe I give him a little bit of a bump just to maybe get above like 10% or so. And then Zach Pascal, a little bit of a bump too. I think if he's at 3%, I probably want to be just a little bit above the field there. Running backs, okay, so I'm down to 10% Miles Sanders. I do like Sanders. I'm going to give him another decent bump. 17% Pacheco feels fine. 16% McKinnon feels fine. 20% Kenneth Gainwell. I like him again quite a bit at this ownership. 5% Boston Scott. Probably try and get above that a little bit. CEH, yeah, get a little bit in there. And now I'm down to 90% Jalen Hurts. I'm probably going to be close to there. I am going to play quite a bit of Jalen Hurts, but my Mahomes has come down quite a bit to now I'm at 35% overall. So I'll probably give Mahomes a little bit of a boost here and then keep crunching. But I'm not going to continue doing this over and over. Just kind of trying to show you my general process, and that's it. I've done it. I've made the correlations in the advanced option groups, and then I'm just adjusting projections here and there just incrementally until I get to exposure levels that I like. And of course, always checking the lineups themselves to make sure that they are still correlating in ways that I want them to. And these ones look good to me. Jalen Hurts with multiple pass catchers, Patrick Mahomes with multiple pass catchers when I've got them in the MVP spot. In general, I think that these lineups are turning out pretty well, getting close to where I want to be. So anyway, that is my general process. Hope you can find some success on Super Bowl Sunday using this or a similar process. Good luck.